Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. A big rumour going around that there's a potential team that's been abusing a loophole in order to effectively cheat the cost cap over the last couple of seasons. We don't know which team this might be, but the word on the street is that it's possibly Ferrari. Very much on Twitter, your perspective in the comments section below, whether there should be or will be any repercussion for this if this is going on. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. Now here's Seb Vettel at the Nordschleife yesterday, and I think today it was confirmed that he's going to be in the paddock for Suzuka. This makes sense because it's quite possible Red Bull win the constructors in Japan, so quite nice to see Vettel back in the paddock, but definitely possible. It might also be possible for Max to win the drivers there, but I think that it's probably a little bit early for that to happen, but he did win it there last year, didn't he? So I guess it is all still possible, but yeah, Seb will be back in the paddock, it seems, in Suzuka. Now, Norris, we've heard rumours over the last few days, he might go to Red Bull, and Red Bull have been very clear they would get him if they could. Norris has kind of said, well, yeah, I'm not going to be at McLaren forever. Max has said that, yeah, sure, Lando, come along. Whether McLaren let him go, that's the question. McLaren and CEO Zak Brown have said, no, that's not going to happen. He's under a contract. Absolutely nothing to see here. But we know in Formula 1, contracts sometimes don't mean all that much. Now, in the article we're going to see here in a second that discusses this potential cost cap discrepancy, Joe Soward also discusses contract negotiations with drivers. There's not that many seats right now that aren't set in stone for next year, and unless this whole Norris to Red Bull thing happens, there might not be that much of interest going on. But Zhou Guanyu has apparently not necessarily quite got the funding behind him that maybe he did have before. It's quite interesting because I think people expected Chinese F1 driver to always have big sponsors, big money coming through. But I think part of the perception in China is like, well, you know, why aren't you winning? You know, like, Zhou, great, you're in Formula 1, great job, but, you know, why aren't you winning races type thing? I think this might be affecting his perception there to some, of course, they rate Zhou, and I'm sure they like him, but I don't think he's, you know, getting big money and big backing, kind of, just the way things tend to be going. So, therefore, Sauber are looking at alternatives. They will probably, when they become Audi Sauber, want a German driver. There's been rumours a while ago that they're going to try and get Vettel out of retirement at the time, and Mick Schumacher would be, in many ways, the ideal man if he's actually good enough, and it's not clear that he is. Yes, he had a decent season against Mazepin, but, you know, when he faced Magnussen, it wasn't quite the same deal. So, and he had a good couple of races, certainly at Austria, but Schumacher is reportedly an option for the 2024 seats. That's, of course, as soon as next season, but it's far from guaranteed, even if he does join, that he's going to be there for the long term. This also another big update today on the 2026 regulations. We discussed yesterday big rumours that possibly for 2025, they're going to make changes to try and stop the dirty air problem we are now experiencing again, which is getting back to being pretty much as bad as it was ever since 2019, 2020, years like that. This is the current plan for the 2026 cars. We've known for some time they're going to hopefully be shorter, narrower, lighter. That's some of the key ideas. So the FIA, the rumour is that the power unit's going to be heavier as well for the new generation. So, but they're going to try and make the car a lot lighter, which probably means it has to be quite considerably smaller. Now, they're only looking to make it 50 kg lighter, which, you know, many people would say isn't really that much. I mean, right now the cars are 790 odd kg, plus the fuel that they start with, that's basically 900 kilos when they start the Grand Prix. Wasn't that many years ago, these cars were like 600 kg, you know, like even less than that. And many people would say, look, take it from 800 down to 650. But look, if they get back to 750, which is not dissimilar to what it was in like 2020, 2021, I think that's a good step. It's maybe not ideal, but you know, with the batteries and stuff, the cars are just going to be a bit heavy. That's how it is. But they will be making the cars shorter and narrower in order to accommodate this, which I think is a good thing. We see a lot of the time nowadays, some of these tracks, the cars are straight up too big for them, and Max Verstappen has been very vocal about the point that in previous generations of cars, even when Verstappen was first coming into the sport, it was possible to take alternate lines to the car in front. Imagine you're going through, you know, the chicane that no longer exists in Spain, for example. With these cars, how big and wide they are, there is one line. You can only go and follow the car in front of you directly behind them. Whereas on the previous generations, you could, because the cars are smaller, be a bit more nimble, a bit more agile, maneuver around the dirty air a little bit more. And there was a bit more you could do with the machinery. So I think drivers are hoping that will come back. This is potentially one of the big things, though, that's been rumoured, is that ground effect will again be the concept. We also know that they're going to do something with regard to active aero. We don't exactly know what that is, whether it's something to do with the rear wing, the front wing, or, you know, there were rumours about like reverse DRS, when instead of the car behind getting DRS, the car in front deliberately, like the downforce is reduced deliberately to allow the car behind to catch up, which sounds like a recipe for disaster, but we'll see what they explore. But ground effect, as in what we currently have with the floor, the Venturi tunnels, is going to be back again, is the present rumour, which, you know, I'm sure Max Verstappen, Adrian Newey and Red Bull are licking their lips at the possibility of this, because that sounds like another Red Bull rocket ship waiting to happen. I guess the other side of things is, if this is the case again and it's ground effect, that we don't know if Red Bull's engine is going to be as good as the competitors. The current rumour is that maybe Mercedes are leading the way on 2026 engine development, and there's some questions about whether the hybrid side that maybe Ford is helping work on is going to be as good as what Mercedes, Ferrari or Honda can produce for Aston Martin, as they're going to partner with then. So that's the latest update on the 2026 regulations. But speaking of 2022, we had just the other day, the FIA confirmed that no team has breached the cost cap, and therefore putting that story to bed for this season, even though you could well imagine that in Singapore some comment on this will be made. Now, Joe Soward comes out with his green notebook, lots of interesting things in here, also including what we discussed about the driver market, saying that, look, Lance Stroll is going to get extended again, so Drugovich is going to have to look somewhere else. We've got the story on Joe, on Schumacher. There was also a bit of a mention on Logan Sargent. He believes that Williams think that Sargent is going to be their man. We've seen Vowles put a bit of pressure on Sargent to say, look, he's got to improve, he's got to do X, Y, Z, I want him to step up his game. But also Vowles and Williams know that in order to see the best of Sargent, it's going to take more than one season. So we'll see what Williams decide to do, but he believes they're going to keep Sargent around. The top bit, though, is very interesting. There was much talk about cost caps lately, with some of the spin doctors of some of the big teams trying to keep the story in the news. But apparently one team, so you've got to look at where the teams are based to figure this out. There are a couple of teams based in Italy, and we'll discuss that in a second. Haas, I guess, also are based in the US, technically, so that's one part. That merits analysis, but there's been a rumour going around the paddock that one team has effectively been allowed to get tax breaks from their government for 5 years of reduced taxation for super skilled foreign workers, which means the team can offer, and therefore declare, a lower salary than its rivals, while the employee still gets more money because there is no tax to pay. Sneaky, huh? Anyway, the FIA has decided everyone is fine. So it's interesting to know that even if this is true, the FIA presumably have looked into this and decided that it's okay. But this does seem like a very interesting loophole because, well, apparently one team is able to use this and therefore pay less money to their staff, even though their staff get paid the same, if not more, and then that money, because staffing, especially the amount of people these teams employ, is a huge percentage of where a lot of that budget goes. And once those costs are covered and have been reduced by a pretty significant tax percentage, it seems, they can put extra money into car development resources, stuff like this. You know, Hamilton said back in 2022 that in 21 it was like 250k will get you a new front wing type thing. So this is where it gets to pretty interesting debate as to, well, I guess first of all, which team might be doing this, if any. It's very unlikely to be any of the UK teams, I would imagine. So we're talking most of the teams based in the UK, this is doubtful for. There has been some discussion on Haas because that might be possible, but people are mostly looking towards Ferrari just because it just seems to align a little. The story makes a bit more sense if it's Ferrari, because first of all, Ferrari tax breaks from the Italian government doesn't sound like a massive surprise. And in addition to the fact that apparently there was some talk about this, whether there are indeed some tax schemes like this in Italy, apparently footballers can use this as well. So this might be a thing where indeed there is like a 5-year of discounted tax rate in Italy. So that makes sense. Now, it's not just Ferrari based in Italy. AlphaTauri are also Scuderia AlphaTauri based out there as well. But, you know, they are a lesser team and they're part of Red Bull in some way. So it seems a little bit more likely that it's Ferrari hiring people from the UK or from around the world, bringing them to Italy, super skilled foreign workers, and therefore getting a tax break for doing so. And that money they would spend on tax that would come out as part of the cap, therefore actually ends up going into the pockets of the team to make some further developments, it seems. teams. So that's the present rumour at least. It's a very interesting loophole if Ferrari are able to, or any other team is able to exploit this. The FIA, I imagine, if this is true, they will have figured it out, so they will know about it during the audits. So then it raises the question, I suppose, does it matter? Is this, perfectly fine? Even though I imagine other teams based elsewhere would start to think, well, surely this is a little bit unfair. So yeah, definitely tweet your thoughts on that one in the comment section below. I wonder if come Singapore we'll get some more things said about the cost cap and whether there's anything to this and whether the FIA needs to take a closer look, because look, this is Formula 1. Any opportunity to use a loophole, any opportunity to bend the rules is going to be exploited, as we've seen for decades in this sport. So teams will try and find ways around the cap, and Red Bull seemingly tried and, well, succeeded in part and then failed by getting caught in 2021. Just before we close out the video, I thought this is pretty crazy actually that Mr. Fernando Alonso reached on the very final lap, I believe, of the Monza Grand Prix, the Italian Grand Prix, his 20,000th lap of Formula 1, the most ever, absolutely. And yeah, well, this is going to continue further, you would think, but yeah, crazy that he hit just precisely 20,000 at the checkered flag. But hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.